The hardest thing in that situation is to figure out when people are fooling themselves.
Maybe what is the big lie, or where should we be wearing our skeptic's hat, separating the wheat from the chaff?
Building AI systems that, like models like ChatGPT, learn the language of English and human language. We're building models that can learn the language of biology.
The most exciting element to this is we're going to have new understanding of individual biology.
So you have suddenly big corporations, hospitals, cyber, tech, and then suddenly you are starting incorporating these models.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. I know we have CEOs, executives from biopharma, as well as those from academia and startup founders as well. And you guys are in for some treat because we have brilliant minds here really leading and shaping the field in biopharma and healthcare. So good for us. And we will get started with a quick introduction of ourselves, as well as one AI function or aspect that we are currently deploying at our workplace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ava Amini. I'm a principal researcher at Microsoft, where I work on really pushing the boundary of the actual AI methods themselves as they can learn from biological data and be powerful models of biology. So what that means is we're building AI systems that, like models like ChatGPT, learn the language of English and human language. We're building models that can learn the language of biology. So thinking about models that can reason around protein sequences, around genomics, around transcriptomics, around biological images, pathology, basically everything on the spectrum from the level of individual molecules to the tissue level, and thinking about how we can actually build frameworks that bring these data and information together to now accelerate therapeutic design and precision medicine. So my passion is really in driving the frontier of science and research. And as for what AI system that I use day to day, I will say that in VS Code, Visual Studio Code, for those insiders within Microsoft, we have a version that deploys a agentic agent that can help, in code assistance and writing and actually execute entire workflows for you. And it's absolutely amazing. So I'll leave it at that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Belén Fraile. I am the Chief R&D Data Science Officer in J&J. So as part of my job, I support across the continuum from the early discovery, manufacturing, translational safety, preclinical tox, and then going throughout the whole clinical development space. Part of the role that a data science officer plays on large pharmaceuticals is enabling and transforming these functions, right? And back to the comment from Saurabh as he opened, and also Rhie, it's how we accompany the functions to provide them with the right tools, but also help them envision and join and reimagine themselves on what they could do if that technology was available for them. So there is, when you think about the efforts or how this translates into my day-to-day job, so partially it's just deploying tools itself, and there is quite a bit of decision-making between what you buy, what you build, what you adapt. The other one is building internal capabilities. So there is quite a bit of specific skills that you need to have and grow within a given company, from those that they have the core researcher and coding capacity to those that they can translate. And then the third one is more in the change management and adoption, right? You need to pair up with these big functions that they have been doing the same job for decades, I would say, in R&D, and how you make sure that you are at the point where they deliver care, and in this case, they deliver their work, which is their processes, their regulatory processes, their medical writing, and then accompany them through that function so you can effectively influence their change and you can just enable them from that manner. So thank you for having me here. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dina Kitabi. I'm professor at MIT. And I'm also a co-founder of a startup. So what I'm focused on is clinical AI, and basically an AI that understands diseases, understand the impact of medication on physiological signals, and be able to understand how like both symptoms and reaction to medications happen over time and what changes in the patient, and be able to inform the doctor and the individuals themselves. And in that sense, like there are two things that if you think about how do you build clinical AI, the first thing is how do you get data, and from real patients. We are not talking about data from people who are fine and perfectly healthy. So, and one thing is that we use AI to get the data from thin air by analyzing the wireless signal that bounce off people. So without asking you to wear wearables or to do anything, I can have AI systems that analyze the wireless signal and get your breathing, your heartbeats, your sleep, your EEG, your movements, all of that stuff. And then there is like, once you get all of that data, and we have been getting that from Parkinson patient, Alzheimer, ALS, rheumatoid arthritis, a variety of diseases. Now the next thing is, can you use it for understanding clinical decision? Asking question, does this person have Parkinson? I don't want to like point now at anyone. So Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, is this person taking antidepressant? Is that changing their physiology? Like, are they taking an anticholinergic drug, for example? Is it changing their physiology? So this is basically what we call clinical AI.
Thank you. I'm Joan LaRovere. I'm a medical doctor in pediatric cardiac intensive care at Boston Children's Hospital. I'm currently the chief medical officer there. And prior to that, I was the ACMO for transformation, and would be happy to discuss some of the work we're doing at Children's in this space. I think it's an extremely interesting population, particularly when you think about rare disease, genetic disorders, some of these novel therapeutics, biologics, the opportunities of N of 1. It's incredible the type of work and opportunity that's there. Also, the data that is there. The other piece that I think is important for this conversation, I co-founded an NGO called Virtue Foundation in 2002. We have special consultative status to the UN, and we've been focused in global health, delivering care on the ground, but over the last 15 years using AI, machine learning, to make the invisible visible. So I've looked at global health, and particularly global health philanthropy, which is the sort of work that we do, as a market and an inefficient market of supply-demand, and created a knowledge graph and a foundational model of all the healthcare NGOs and hospitals in 72 low and middle income countries. We've created an enterprise-grade solution for this, and I think our use case was to match the doctors to deliver care, but we've identified the medical deserts by specialty, and we can really target in. And I think for biotech and pharma, this becomes extremely interesting in terms of patient populations and addressing the diseases where they most need that care.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia Timberlake, and I've been a drug developer and building startups in biotech for about 12 years. And now I run my own consulting company. And for most of that time in biotech, my focus with AI was on, how do we use machine learning in the drug discovery process to mostly do target discovery, but everything from, target discovery through precision medicine and then getting into the clinic. And then now, as a consultant, I work with a number of different companies, mostly biotechs, but also VCs. And what's so wonderful about that is I see, every company is a good match to a different type of AI, right? So we talk about AI as if it's this one thing. In reality, right? Like there's this jagged edge of different things that it is good at and not so good at, and that changes, seems like every month, right? And so a lot of what I think about now is a match between the company and the AI technology, and doing that change management. Like, how do you get your team and your whole process, your whole workflow to integrate that, and what are the complementary technologies that you need? So I don't develop so much AI anymore, but I get to see a lot of different strategies for using it.
Excellent. Thank you. So as for ground rules, I would say we try to keep it civil, but we're also not AI, so we want to be passionate. So if you want to interject and have a heated discussion, by all means, go ahead. So in terms of my next question, where do you see in your own respective fields where AI has made an impact and a tangible change, and maybe an area where it's a little underappreciated?
In discovery, I think the most mature technologies are protein structure prediction and now binary prediction, and I think that those have had an enormous impact. I think what is underappreciated is benchmarking, and I think a lot of effort has gone into that, not enough, and I think this and so it's sort of the unsung hero and needs to be glorified more, because all of these issues that always come up when we talk about AI, about trust, about hype, I think benchmarking is a solution to a lot of those, and we need to glorify and like make it the sung hero of biopharma.
I was just going to double down on the comment about benchmarking, because it is so critical. And as someone who's actually developing these models, my team at MSR, Microsoft Research, we think quite hard about not only benchmarking, but also evaluation. And so as we're kind of on this journey of actually developing new AI models for biology, we think very carefully about, okay, what is the intended use case that they're going to we hope to achieve with such a model? Is it protein design? Is it structure prediction? Is it phenotyping, rapid phenotyping from microscopy images? We have to design the evaluations accordingly to those use cases to be able to get signal back. And I think furthermore, even at the frontier scientifically, right, there are all these institutes putting out these proclaimed foundation models of, a virtual cell or things like this. And yet very, very few of these efforts have really taken a critical look to benchmark all of these methods side by side and say, okay, what actually is useful? Where are the shortcomings? And so we've done some work to this extent, and really appreciate you coming forward with that, because it is so true, especially from a research perspective.
I think if I look at it from the healthcare lens and hospital lens, because that's where the patients are that biotech and pharma are trying to reach, the easy place to use the AI is the automation, the workflows, getting deep, and Dana and I could probably talk about some of that, into the clinical piece. It's a harder leap. And I think there's a lot of piloting, looking, but creating the deep infrastructure that's required to really unleash the information that's there. And that information that we have, I think, also has to be coupled with what Dina's talking about, what's happening in their real world environment. And then we can start to really think about customization to the individual patient, because that's eventually where we are going to go. And I think that's what everybody seeks for themselves. And we have a new opportunity to really look at how we research and how we think about patients as they relate into the diseases that we're trying to target. They're often not one disease. And AI unleashes the capability to segment in ways that are really, I think, going to be helpful. And to Ava's point, I think one of the pieces in this work, and any work that I've done within biotech and pharma, I feel like clinicians are not brought in early enough to help think through, what is this like in real life? And clinicians that can bridge. Like, not everybody's going to be able to make that bridge, but folks who have like a foot in the actual clinical space, maybe a foot in biotech pharma or in AI. And I find the richest work I'm engaged in is when I am there with the data science team and others with their expertise, because there isn't a single subject matter expert. And you may be building the wrong thing because you don't have the right people around the table in the work team. And I think those are real opportunities of right now.
From my side, I think the angle, I agree with many of these comments, and the lack of gold standards sometimes just to compare these models is fundamental. I think the area that I want to stress out is that I think data science in many ways, right, which are the methods that we are using, it's fully integrated into our space and has been for a long time. And I can speak from the clinical setting to the discovery setting. I think what is unappreciated, but also the struggle that we have is that still our data assets, our systems, everything is very siloed. And it's just, I know we have been hearing about this for a long time, but it's true. And that is a big obstacle for us to scale some of these models, right? From the discovery space, getting all of the different molecular assets and profiling that we have across the board, they all live coming out from different instruments, different systems, and you can continue throughout that life cycle through the clinical trials, like getting the data from the different CROs, patient-reported data. So this is, you start kind of compiling all of these, and it's almost like a patchwork. So imagine that even at a single company, but then across the industry. So that's the largest probably obstacle that we face, but the largest opportunity, right? And there is different ways to go at this, but in the moment that we are able to start solving pragmatically how we can start aggregating this data, honestly, a lot of these models, they will start having tremendous implications for industry. I think at this point, we are still use case by use case, or trial optimization by trial optimization, or patient identification, but it's hard to get scale. Therefore, the impacts across industry are still pending.
Yeah, so, I mean, apart from agreeing with what the other panelists said, but like one of the things that this is natural, basically, it's like text and images have been developed much earlier than other modalities. And by now, like they are much more advanced, and they are probably the easy and low hanging fruit, like doing things like automating much of the just the paperwork, basically, whether in healthcare or in pharma, generating like protocols, stuff like that. So that is, I think, the first set of things, or analyzing images, like maybe slides, like for example, stuff like that. But then you see now, like, people are talking about agenetic models or systems, but they are still heavily reliant on the existing GPT and LLM frameworks. Like, basically, you can imagine that you can have a doctor that just like check with GPT what's like the best answer, like similarly as a medical like student would just go and check all the books. But that's one thing, and that's very helpful. In fact, it's just like very nice to be able to ask these questions and answer, and you can like apply the same thing for any function. But then you go to the next level. Can we understand medicine and whether understand biology or understand physiology at much deeper level by having the analysis of the data? Like, there are certain things that we discovered with our models that you can get your best neurologist, for example. They can't tell you whether someone has Parkinson, for example, from their breathing, even if they don't have any motor symptoms. But AI, we showed, can do that. And I'm sure this is just like scratching the surface. There are so many things that AI can learn about human physiology, can learn about biology, can learn about diseases from just understanding the data at a level that we as a human, we cannot combine observation across things in time and space in an easy manner, similarly to machines. So that, I think, is underappreciated and will have a huge leap. I think the other thing that is underappreciated is the complexity of the system that we are dealing with. And that is really, I mean, we all know that healthcare is one of the most complex systems. And in fact, put AI aside, I mean, it's not like the other part of the system is working perfectly. So healthcare is very complex. Pharma also is very complex. Many like of these companies are very big companies, have so many operations that goes and interact with regulatory, and there are so many aspects of it. So that complexity, I think, is probably even more difficult to like jump over these hoops than the technical difficulty.
Pharma, very complicated, obviously, but we're solution-oriented people, right? So today, how can we recalibrate our expectations so that we get the ball rolling and continue with the evolution of AI and improvement in healthcare and drug discovery?
I think the way to get the ball rolling and ensure progress is to deliver results and real world outcomes in any of those sectors. And for biology, maybe that means a new discovery or a new hypothesis or a new capability that was not previously attainable with technology and methods as they stood before. In the clinical context, maybe it's something like a drug repurposing or an N of 1 trial sort of identification or matching. So thinking again about what are the tangible real world outcomes we can drive is, to me, I think is really what's necessary to keep the momentum going.
Yeah. I can add something. I think actually the ball is rolling. In fact, there are many different balls in different domains. The question is, how can you create critical mass that you can change the system? And that, I think you really need to find a way to, maybe like the business structure that would allow for it to happen, whether in healthcare, whether in pharma, whether even going directly to consumer and about health related. We are seeing now even concierge doctors are going directly and getting adding to the system. So I think getting critical mass is the issue and the next stage that we all should think about. But in terms of getting the ball rolling, it is rolling. I mean, basically J&J, they have AI systems on multiple fronts. Many of the other big pharma, I think all the big pharma by now, we work with a variety of biotech and pharmaceutical companies that are on clinical trials and how to get data from clinical trials that feed back the understanding of the drug and the disease. I'm sure my colleagues here also have many examples. So there are many examples, but these are building small steps. And I think there is a point where you will need to go to an inflection point, similarly as we've seen with text and images.
Yeah, I think some of it does go to the enterprise infrastructure and CEOs of companies feeling comfortable with their data asset. So I think I just coming off the back of MIT's tech review, MTech AI, and that was definitely major subject of conversation, right? I don't want to put all my data into these LLMs and now it's out there. My data is my asset. So I think it is finding ways in which that remains and is retained as a valuable asset and having the right enterprise infrastructure to be able to do that and not lose your company. I think that's what's slowing down some of this. There's lots of things at the edges and wonderful things happening, but to do something big at scale.
I think there are ways we can get the ball rolling faster potentially. And I've been thinking about this over the last 6 months because, when I have sort of my more VC hat on, I say things like, any biotech startup that's not using AI a lot is going to be left behind. And then when I have my biotech operator hat on, I'm like, I can't, adopt this new risky AI thing because I have 3 months of funding and I have all these regulatory documents to file. And I can't, anything that's not on critical path, I don't have bandwidth for. And so I started thinking about that dichotomy a little bit more and how to solve that. And I think, in biopharma, we're always taking risks. It's a really risky business. And I think AI is in some ways like any other tech that we're looking at adopting. And so what I tried to sit down and do is with the companies that I'm working with, kind of look systematically, okay, what could help us on critical path? What are the, 10 biggest advances? What are the complementary technologies that would take to support those and in-house those? Do we have the personnel, right? And just really be systematic about it. And like, what are we afraid of, right? Like, oftentimes we would just get as far as like, oh, I don't know if I trust it, or like, oh, I don't know if it can write that part of the regulatory document, and then it kind of stops, because I think sometimes you can get a little paralyzed with something that's really new. But I think if you have like an advocate and you can sit down, really understand the risk, then like our business is all about taking risks. And if we can really break it down in that way, then like there are places that we can get the ball rolling a little faster.
And just quickly, because probably you want us just to move on, but I think something that I think threads all of these, which is how we can leverage the ecosystem to its fullest. At the end of the day, as big pharmaceutical, you are trying to leverage your own capability, but how you leverage academia, tech, to help us build the capabilities in the right places, but also build almost that layer of bilinguals that then we're going to be able to leverage this effectively, but also like almost be myth busters, because in many ways, a lot of what is happening, there is quite a bit of immobility taking place in certain organizations. People don't know. So you have suddenly big corporations or hospitals, cyber, tech, and then suddenly you are starting incorporating these models. So then you want to figure out, are we going to have a breach, not a breach? What is going to happen? So in the absence of the know-how, which is what really happens once you use these models, there is that shutdown, depending on your level of risk aversion, right? So I do think that that's something that the more we can leverage the deep expertise to start elevating the areas that in reality there is true risk versus other areas that there is risk because of the lack of really understanding. And in some of the areas, we might not even have enough evidence. Then we are able to almost grade the level of exactly like how much risk we are facing in each of the different decisions so we can continue to move forward. But now we have pretty sometimes erratic decision making because you want to make sure that in the absence of clarity, you just are making a call, right? So that would be phenomenal.
That's actually very relevant to my next question. So I don't think a day goes by where you wake up and you're not wowed by another AI news, right? So as leaders in your organizations, how are you keeping up with this, and how are you keeping your organization relevant in terms of skill sets or mindsets or structure, whatever it may be?
So I think it's very context dependent. And so when I'm working with sort of a seed stage company, very small, like you have to pivot quickly and look at adopting, whatever the newest thing is. And I've been really, really pleasantly surprised with like, I'm a computational biologist. I was not a software person. I was not a software engineer, but I have been just blown away by what a good engineer and the frontier of AI can accomplish together. And so I think for that stage of company, that is sort of the pace that I'm looking at, right? Like it's every month you're thinking about, what are the, is it Manus? Is it O3? Like whatever the new thing that's the frontier model, and how can it help me with coding, with unstructured data? Context dependent though, like for, I'm an operator at a biotech and we're 12 months to IND. And so there, it's a slower pace, right? And again, looking like what's at the critical path, what's come out in the last 3 months. Is it going to help us on the critical path, or is it going to be a distraction for the org? So I think like, again, it's matching like AI is so big, matching it with the context, the specific context of the business.
Yeah, I agree. It has to be matched with the context. If I look at like what we're doing with Virtue Foundation and building this platform, it's very front edge, out there, move quickly, bring in the latest and greatest, because it's a smaller, more nimble team, and it's easier to take that risk, because we're really trying to illuminate the situation on the ground where there is no access to care. So time really matters. And you can bring in, we have agentic work going on. You can bring in the latest and greatest. Then I change my hat and I'm sitting at Boston Children's Hospital There's HIPAA compliance, there's regulatory. This is life and death to people as if we're starting to think about bringing these things into a clinical space. You're establishing your data governance and AI committees. It's a very different situation, and I think it is quite context specific. But you want to try to move as quickly as you can in whichever type of organizational structure you're in. I think in bigger organizations, I can't remember I think it was Belen who maybe said this, education is key because you're assuming that everybody there knows what you know, and you start talking as if they understand RAG and agentic and blah, blah, blah. And this person hasn't logged on to ChatGPT yet. So I think it's really important as you start thinking about bringing these things into organizations, what's going on in terms of creating a learning community? When it's a large organization, are you creating a learning community? Are you allowing people to learn more organically about what AI is before you start going full steam ahead on something novel? I think it's really important to bring the organization along, and particularly your C-suite and middle management along. I think that is an important piece.
I agree. And I mean, there's many dimensions to your question around how we are building the right skills. And I think I covered that a little bit with my past comment. But to double click on this one, I would say that over the next months, there is going to be probably like new dimension or capability being very obvious for most of the big companies, which is how we double down on this, on the AI implementation, engagement, and adoption. Because the reality is that, and this has been happening for a while, but this is one of those times in which the technology has completely outpaced our ability even to integrate it. Even ourselves that we live in this space, you wake up every day with new models. So needless to say, to a lay person that is doing a specific functional job. So there is, I think, an under-appreciation, and I'm thrilled to be in J&J. We are investing quite a bit on this, but making sure that everyone on the ground doing each of individual functions, they are engaging with these tools, and not only with trainings, but also how this tool relates to the day-to-day job, right? And almost forcing them in a quote unquote, in the sense like, let's sit down and think about how you can apply the Microsoft Copilot, this additional GPT version within our environment to do your job differently. And sometimes you just need to walk them through a little bit more closely, so to help them, imagine it, because a lot of them, sometimes they have not even tried it. And sometimes it's as simple as they try to open the application and it was not running. I mean, very, very mundane things, but at the end, that creates a growing chasm between what the capabilities that they can give us, but then the day-to-day job that everyone is running and making sure that they can accomplish their job, and they never spend that time, right?
So tech bro culture that we know of is defeated today, it seems, because it's an all-woman panel. But of course, we still love the tech bros. However, are we seeing a shift in AI leadership demographics? We can be a little candid about this one.
I've never experienced the tech bro culture, and I've been in STEM and at tech schools all my life, and so I don't know if I'm just very fortunate. I'm very appreciative to all the women who've come before me, but yeah, so I can't say whether it's changing.
I would say there are, from my experience, more women coming in this space, although it has been male-dominated. I was really inspired last year. I was speaking at the Databricks Data and AI Summit, and they have a Women in AI event. And it was so oversold. And as you looked out across this room of sea of women from really diverse group of women, it was so inspiring. And I think it's important that there are more events of that type that really inspires more women to come in this direction. It has to be welcoming, which, sciences, STEM, AI have not always been. I'm sure Dina will have a lot of comments on that space maybe, but... I'm just looking at your expression as I'm speaking.
Yeah, I don't, at least for me, from MIT and also generally tech, like, I don't think there is a difference, AI, not AI. I'm just thinking that there is a big difference, probably, that we are getting into new times with new implication for the government decision that might impact things. Like, I'm thinking about MIT and our students and the grants and stuff like this. But I mean, guess women don't have exactly the same representation as men across computer science. We are much more lucky, like me in computer science than my colleagues in double E, and I'm sure that, I don't know, maybe material science is even worse. I don't know, but that's got used to it, I think, and I personally never really experienced anything other than, it would be much nicer to have more women.
Can I make one other comment? I actually think it's critical in the healthcare piece that there are women at the table because of experiences in healthcare. I actually think it's really important to have diversity there as we start thinking through this.
I think it's different also. I come to it as a computer scientist, and I'm thinking, okay, technology. But again, now, like, when you think about it, actually, because there are huge differences in the immune system of women versus men, just different racial groups, and so.
And that has historically been a problem. Like, women weren't allowed to be subjects of research until the 1990s. All of the mice models were male mice, right? Like, let's start there, right? A stem cell. Like, there's so much, and if we're not thinking about, gender and race are part of the biology. It's my biology. The hormones matter to all of my physiology. So I think it is important that there is that.
So covering all biology, obviously very important. My final question, I want us to do a rapid fire kind of a style ending. So everyone 20 seconds. How do you feel about AGI and what excites you most about AI?
I think the definition, it depends on how you define AGI. Different people have different definitions, and according to that, you can, construct the arguments accordingly. So I think it's a very, in a way, subjective and personal point of view on how you think about AGI. What excites me the most is, I'm very passionate about the work I do, and I think that the opportunity for AI to realize new insight into biology that leads to hopefully improved treatments for people is huge. We have a lot of uncertainty around what are the best business models to actually crack this open and make this a scalable, realizable thing that someone like us, being Microsoft, can actually, serve the rest of the community in biopharma in terms of bringing and translating our advances from the modeling front into the real world. But on the principle and the prospect of it, being at the frontier of the research, I'm extremely, extremely excited and very bullish about this possibility.
So I think from the AGI, again, I think we have taking the definition that if AI is a computer science field, that is focused on building systems or machines that they emulate human cognition, right? So based on the definition itself, the reality is that we are getting closer and closer depending on what is the type of human condition we want to do. And also the threshold of what is human cognition, we keep moving that base depending on the different testing that we have been doing over time. So the good thing is that we are advancing and the systems are getting smarter, and the important thing is that we use them for good. So what makes me excited about it's really being able just to there is so many areas of unmet need that we have so limited therapeutic applications, especially on the neurology space, having a close, all of us, we have close family cases there. But I do think that we will see, or I hope we will see in our age, an opportunity for us to treat very untreatable diseases at this point in the neurodegeneration space, of course, in the oncology space. So really getting closer into that ability to go closer to precision medicine and also undruggable conditions, that's something that I do think we will see. This is a tipping point, and we will see an acceleration of that. So very excited for that.
To me, like the really exciting thing is that AI really can change medicine, because like in the vast majority of cases, like when you talk about text and when you talk about images, we really are trying to reach the level of a human and like a collection of humans. We all can see, we all like can write and to some level, and maybe that would be like a better writer or like better, like more knowledgeable person. But when you're talking about new modalities, like modalities that we don't naturally see, it's like how your EEG is changing in your brain all the time. This is not something that we as a humans see it all the time. So when you are extracting these new modalities and operating on them with machine learning, you have the potential of completely new world. Like imagine like if we as a human, for example, we didn't have the ability to see like how much more limited we would be. So if you are adding the ability to have real intelligence to manipulate data modalities that traditionally as a human, we don't have the ability to manipulate that data modality, there are things that are amazing that can happen. So this is what excites me, and I think medicine and really operating not on just the textbook of medicine, but operating on the actual physiological signals, on the actual biological signals that we get, that could be very, very like transformative to everything that we know about medicine.
100% agree. To me, that is the most exciting element to this. We're going to have new understanding of individual biology. And that doesn't mean taking something from my medical notes that somebody wrote that maybe was accurate or inaccurate. It's real data and real signal on me as a patient that can help predict where I'm going directionally. There's continuous data that we're all producing just by existing that will help us. I look at my patients in the ICU. They are hooked up to continual data streams from their EKG to their EEG to their left atrial line to their central venous line. And we're just continuously, there it goes. And I can look at it and I'm interpreting it. But wow, you put a machine on top of that, it can read things earlier than I can see them, better than I can see them. We can estimate an ejection fraction now off an EKG. I can't do that. I got to get an echo probe. I got to put it on the patient. So I think that the new horizons of what we can do in terms of actual care at a bedside of a patient and bring it up further and be able to tell me a direction I'm heading in where I can intervene before I end up with disease is really the potential of this.
All right, Rhie, I'll give you what you want. I think I'm in the camp. I don't think AGI is discrete. I think it's sort of like a continuous thing. But I think for all intents and purposes, we have it. And I think what is so exciting about AI today is like 12 months ago, you would have asked me like, hey, is it going to be able to reason at, grad student level scale and solve those problems? I said, I don't know. And like, I think now it's like abundantly clear that those capabilities are here. Now, that doesn't mean like they're going to be working like that in our business, right? So I think we have that certainty, and now we can like do all the hard work and put in the investment and take the risk to put the complementary technologies in place, right? So, okay, so you have AGI, but like it hasn't trained on your private data. It hasn't trained on your messy, disorganized like Excel sheets that you have hiding on all your personal computers, right? Like you have to do that work. And now you can justify the investment because I think it's so abundantly clear that the frontier models are capable of ingesting it and using it. So that's what's so exciting to me right now, thinking about how you can remake your business and your workforce to really leverage that.
Hi, everyone. I work for a venture capital firm based out of Japan, and I need your help. I mean, all day, every day. And Sonia, we know Sonia very well. We see pitch decks that like say, we jokingly now call it like AI Shazam. Like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then AI. and it's at like a comical point now, right? So I recently met an angel investor, and she told me I only invest in women-led companies, and I said, well, why is that? Is it like a moral imperative? And she said, well, no, it's because women just like lie way less. That's that. So what I'm asking all of you is to help inform us who are looking at technologies that we're not necessarily expert on. Maybe what is the big lie, or where should we be wearing our skeptic's hat when we see AI Shazam every day of our lives, and kind of separating the wheat from the chaff when we see this? Please, anyone, help us out.
Well, I'd love to start, but you already talked to me. So like always be skeptical. And there's definitely the camp of people who are like, oh, I'm doing linear regression, so I'm going to put AI Shazam on the slides. I think that the hardest thing in that situation is to figure out when people are fooling themselves. And so I think like broadly the answer to this is benchmarking, and we need to have more biological benchmarks. And there some people, Future House and Epic, and who are putting those out, and that's getting better. And we need to glorify benchmarking. So I think it's all about the benchmarking, and to like when people are fooling themselves, meaning they've really they've overfit to their own data and they're just interpolating, and it's not going to generalize, and like it's really, really hard to, I think, do good benchmarking in biology because it's so complex. And so I think as a community we need to invest in that and pull that up. And yeah, so I don't think there's any like other super cheap and easy answers to that problem.
I think there are multiple axes to your problem. One axis is nowadays everyone calls anything AI, like from your like random forest model to your like transformer and diffusion model. It's like all AI. So that is one issue. The other issue is basically like when somebody shows me some model. Okay, so I don't know, this is the screens for Alzheimer's from, let me say, from your wearable. Like, okay, so like somebody is selling you a model that screens for Alzheimer from Apple Watch data. And at that level, you have to ask a completely different question. It's exactly like, are they overfitting? Are they like, is this real? But the other issue, like the other axis, is whether they are doing like how deep is their AI. I think this is a different question. This is like you have to think more about the market and why do you need the AI label? Is it that you need the AI label to go to your LP and say, yeah, this fund is for AI, so we are funding this company using this? Or do you need the AI model because you think that this is important for the growth of their company? Because, I mean, if the business model is good and they have, I don't know, like a random forest model and it's working and it can like, this is exactly what the business needs, there is no point putting a transformer on top of it. This is just not a good design. So I think it's really, you have to think about why I am using the AI label here, and whether it's just I need a label because of marketing, which many people use it for marketing, which may be okay within certain limits, or I actually really like there is a problem with their AI model that this is not real, this is bogus.
I'll quickly add that simple questions go a long way in delineating substance from surface. So especially when it comes to assessing technical realness, can they explain a simple question like what are the inputs to your model? What are the outputs? What is the format of the data? Just very, very basic things that you'd be surprised many, many times, a proposal or a pitch comes your way and you find that, the technical leaders of this company cannot answer simple questions about what they're proposing to do. And that will cut through a lot of the garbage that comes through.
So the lady from Japan, I hope you got the epiphany or the insights you were looking for. But unfortunately, this is all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, the wonderful, exceptional panelists.